Joining me now to answer some questions that many people have is the founder of Moskowitz LLP and tax attorney Steve Moskowitz. And Steve, you know, the tax filing deadline, it's been pushed back. When is the date that people need to file now?
July 15th, and unlike the normal extension, you also have until July 15th to actually pay the tax. So they've given you an extension both to file it and to pay it. That's a big change.
Yeah, so before, what, you would have to possibly just estimate what you would have to pay and then send that in earlier?
Yes, so what happened was it used to be on April 15th. There was an extension of time to file, not an extension of time to pay. So even if you extended off to October, you still had to pay April 15th. If you didn't, there was a penalty to pay.
All right. Now, Steve is here. He's going to answer any of the questions you may have about filing your taxes, the impact of coronavirus, and the postponement of that filing and payment deadline. You can call and text 415-8080-810. You can also email some of your questions, Nikki@KGORadio.com. I do have one listener question here regarding the stimulus and relief check. This person's asking, if you owe back taxes, you still get the check, but a lot of people don't know this. Is that true, that even if you owe back taxes, you would still get that check?
The current thinking on that is yes, it is. And also one of the things I'd like to offer to all your listeners for free, anybody that calls or emails my office or goes to my website, we will give you free printed material on a lot of these things. There's a lot of complications, and yes, this, but you have to do this, and you have to do this by then. You can have it for free. Just contact us either at 888-TAX-DEAL or MoskowitzLLP.com. We'll send it to you for free to help.
Oh, perfect. And we'll, of course, share that as well on our social medias. Now, the SALT provisions. I had two questions from a listener, from two different listeners on this. One listener wrote, because of SALT provisions in the 2017 tax reform law, we capped at $10,000. We owe now. Our tax liability was raised, not lowered, by Trump's tax reform because of SALT. Is there any advice for this listener?
Yes, one of the things you want to take a look at is go ahead and look at your total situation, because the new CARES Act took away a lot of provisions of the Tax Reform Act. For example, now you can carry back a loss for 5 years. So a loss that you incur in 2018, 2019, or 2020, it was taken away before. They gave it back to you. Now you can carry back for 5 years, and you can carry back at 100% instead of 80%. Also, they made a technical correction where if you've made qualified improvements after September 9th, 2017, you now can bonus depreciate. You can now go ahead and deduct the entire amount. So, again, the idea is you're filing amended tax returns, NOLs. You're going back and saying, hey, you know that money I paid you 5 years ago, 4, 3, 2, 1 year ago? You have to give it back to me. So the bottom line is you can go ahead and do that. Also, for people that have rental properties, there's a provision, something called cost segregation analysis, where you can increase the depreciation, carry it back 5 years, and the government writes you a check. These are all things you can do. We haven't even gotten yet to the PPP program and the economic injury disaster loans. These are all things on your current returns you can do, carry them back, and the government writes you a check.
Wow.
They're really trying to help. They're really giving money away.
But it also does seem, Steve, like you need to also know that you can do these things, right? Do you feel like that information is out there for people to understand? Like, let's just say people get their taxes done, maybe at some of these tax places, or they use online help. Are all of these changes in there to walk people through?
You know, there's a lot of information, and some of it keeps changing daily, like with some of these loans. So the bottom line is, whoever helps you through this better know about it. There's a lot to read, and also that would be covered in the free print material that I've offered all your listeners.
Perfect. And again, I'm speaking with Steve Moskowitz. You can find him at MoskowitzLLP.com. Also, go to call 888-TAX-DEAL, and Steve will send you all that free information to kind of walk you through. I have another thing regarding the SALT ruling. This is for people who itemized in 2018. So this person says, I was way over the standard deduction, received a 1099-G from California. Because this person says they were way over the standard deduction, they were not able to deduct the tax refund. You don't have to pay the federal tax on the refund, but there's no place to report this and explain this. How do you handle that? If you just don't report 1099-G without explanation, this person's worried they'll be audited. What's your advice?
Okay, so what happens is if you don't report any type of 1099, the IRS computer will say, hey, you forgot this income, pay up taxes, penalties, and interest. So on the line called other income, what you would do is you have a note where you report it, and then you subtract it, and you say, see attached. So on the line where it says other income, report it, subtract it. You have a schedule there where you can explain it. That's how you avoid the problems.
All right, very good. Okay, we have another question. With the filing deadline pushed back to July, can you make 2019 contributions to your IRAs later as well?
Absolutely, you can. And what happens is when you're doing that, now you have to watch out because IRAs are different than other programs. So some programs you're stuck until April 15th. Others go as far as October 15th. There's over 20 different types of pension plans. So the best thing you should do is talk to the provider, whether it's your bank or brokerage house, and ask them which it is. Because, again, a lot of people will extend their return so they can pay it as late as October 15th. Some people are September 15th. Some are stuck with April 15th. So call your provider. They'll tell you.
All right. And speaking of those dates, I have a listener that texted me, as a business, do I need to file an estimated tax still on April 15th?
No, the government has graciously pushed that off to July 15th.
Okay, so it's still the same date. All right. 415-8080-810. You can call or text that line with your questions for tax attorney Steve Moskowitz. And again, Steve has graciously offered to KGO listeners to provide free paperwork information to get you through this unusual and unique tax period. You can go to his website, moskowitzllp.com. You can also call 1-888-TAX-DEAL. Another question for you, Steve. This person says, when I filed for my 2019 taxes in January, I didn't give the IRS a direct deposit method. Can I do it after the fact so I could receive the stimulus check faster? Do you know?
Go ahead and try. And again, the problem is a lot of these things are a work in process. And also with the IRS right now, they're only partially open. So there's a lot of things that were normally open to people that are now closed. There are lines that they're not answering. So go ahead and try it. It won't cause any harm, but don't count on it either.
All right. I know that some people adjust their withholdings based on how much money they make, if they make less or more in any given year. What's your advice to people thinking about adjusting their withholdings right now?
You should sit down with your tax advisor, and the idea is to get the withholdings so you don't owe them and they don't owe you, because if you get a big refund, although some people say that's nice, basically you've made an interest-free loan to the government. You don't need to do that. On the other hand, if you owe them money, you can wind up paying penalties unless you do something called a protect estimate, where depending on your income level, you pay either 100 or 110% of the prior amount, and then you won't be penalized. But the bottom line is that's a number crunching where you sit down with your tax provider. They should be able to do it, and then you can adjust it accordingly, because if you are getting a refund, it's better to have the money in your hand now rather than wait.
Absolutely. Let's go to the phones, and we have Gary calling KGO from Daly City. Gary, what is your question for Steve Moskowitz?
Well, first, good health to everybody. Prayers for everybody.
Oh,
Number one,
good health to everyone.
Yeah, I'm retiring. My tax guy I've had forever in San Francisco has got a form of dementia, so it's a little hard right now. But I have a question. I'm going to get $44,000 a year on my pension starting, and then about $17,000-$18,000 in the Social Security. I've always claimed one. I own my house. I bought in '78. I love you, Grandma. But anyway, everything else is okay. No anything owed. No anything. Just zero. Is it one better than zero? Will you explain the difference to me?
So what happens is it's very similar to the previous question. You should sit down with your tax preparer and calculate what it takes, whether it's 0, 1, 2, whatever, to determine what you're going to need to break even. That's a numbers crunching question, but the best way to do it is so that you have the money in hand. You don't owe them, and they don't owe you.
Right, exactly.
Also, we have a question very easily.
Perfect. Will this stimulus money be taxable? I've also heard that this is kind of it's kind of a loan or whatever on what you would get in your 2020 taxes that you filed. Do you know anything about, this stimulus money and its tax implications?
Yes, the stimulus money is a gift from the government. It is specifically not taxable by the federal government and specifically not taxable by California. It's a gift. It's free.
Awesome. That's exactly what I wanted you to say, Steve. All right, back to the phones.
I'm glad you invited me.
There we go. Let's say good morning to Linda. Linda is calling KGO from San Bruno. What is your question for Steve Moskowitz?
Hi, I actually have two. I'm a nanny, so I'm self-employed, and I normally pay my taxes in October. So would I still file an extension in April? And I also wanted to ask, I have back taxes that I owe, and I have a payment plan. Am I still supposed to be making those payments as, like this month and so on for the next 3 months, or is that deferred?
Okay, so there's a few things there. Normally, if you want to go to October, I would go ahead and file the extension now. It never hurts to file it early. Secondly, with the payment plan, the IRS and the state are giving extensions on it. So the bottom line is you can skip a few payments and still not violate the plan. These are all brand new special rules.
Okay, good. And again, if you have a question for Steve, you can call or text 415-8080-810. I have a question here. What about tax implications for people considering cashing in on their 401k to get through this time? Is that ever a good idea?
So that's a financial question, and the bottom line is this. In theory, you should only use your retirement funds for retirement because most people that take them out never put them back. However, if it's a question of buying groceries or paying for things you need, then yes, by all means take it. And the government's given special rules there where they'll let you take $100,000, and if you're under 59.5, you're not being hit with those penalties. So the bottom line is you can even go ahead and they up the loan amount from 50 to 100. That's something people might want to consider as well.
All right, I have this text from a listener, Dave, asking, can I be refunded from the insurance mandate fine I paid in past years? I don't know what an insurance mandate fine is, but I'm hoping you do.
Yeah, that's what happens if you didn't have the appropriate health insurance and you paid a penalty for it. They're currently not making a refund on that. But again, this is changing by the day because they come out with these proclamations. It's like with these loans, like the PPP loans and the others, they issued regulations literally 1 hour before the banks were supposed to open for business. So what happens is they keep changing what they're doing. So this is something that even though the answer is whatever it is today, you want to check with the person that helps you with your taxes because it literally might be different tomorrow.
So given that, Steve, would you advise people to wait closer to July to file their taxes?
Well, it depends if you have to pay or you're getting a refund. So if you're getting a refund, I would say file it immediately, not to mention the fact there's two really important things under the CARES Act, the PPP and also the economic injury disaster loans. Let's talk about the PPP first. Okay. Basically, this is what people are talking about is the free money. So what happens is you go ahead and you ask the government for 2.5 times the average monthly payroll. So let's assume that your average monthly payroll was $100,000. You ask for $250,000, and then you add to that the health care costs. And then if you go ahead and you use it for payroll and some for rent, at least 75% for payroll, and you do it in the next 8 weeks, it converts from a loan to a grant. It's literally free money. And by the way, you still get your income tax deduction. So what happens is the federal government gives you a gift, you use it to pay your employees, you get a tax deduction, and you never have to pay it back. But watch out. This program is only until the funds run out. So they say, well, you have until June 30th to apply, but the bottom line is it's the sooner of that or literally until the money runs out, although Congress is considering adding more money to the fund, and the money is really going. This started on April the 3rd, that was 10 days ago, and the money is just flying away. if you don't go ahead and pay it for the right things, it's still okay, but you have to pay it back within 2 years. But it's only 1% interest, and you don't make the first payment for 6 months. So again, what's really important when you get the money, you have to properly account for it, because you have to go back to the bank and prove to them that you qualify for the grant instead of loan. That's what you have to watch out for there.
We have a call from Angie. She is calling KGO from San Jose, and it's a self-employment question, Angie?
Yes, I'm a hairdresser, and I want to know, is it better to do unemployment or to do the small business loan?
So what happens is those are a compare and contrast, because you want to not only consider that, but in addition to the PPP, you want to consider the economic injury disaster loans. And with that one, while they're thinking about it, they're supposed to give you $10,000 within 3 days. Now, the 3 days that they promised hasn't actually happened, but they're supposed to give you $10,000 within 3 days as an advance, and then you get to keep it. You don't have to pay it back, even if they turn you down on the loan. Now, it's different than the PPP, because with the PPP, essentially it's primarily for payroll and somewhat for rent. The economic injury disaster loans, that's basically any business expense, but the interest rate goes up to 3.75 instead of 1%, but you've got 30 years, up to 30 years to pay it back, and the first payment isn't until a year later. Now, you can combine these things. So you might have both PPP, the payroll protection, and the economic injury disaster loans, but you can't double dip. So what you have to be able to do is say, well, look, I'm using the PPP for payroll, and I'm using the economic injury disaster loan for other business expenses. But the best thing to do is sit down with somebody that's knowledgeable and get the best from all of these, the PPP, the economic injury disaster loans, and other things that are being offered. For example, there's also something for people that's a payroll tax credit. But with some of these programs, you can't, for example, with the PPP, if you do that, that's fine, but then you can't have the payroll credit. But you can have the economic injury disaster loan. That's why I'm giving the handout, because I'm spitting these rules out, and unless you're really, really familiar with it, basically you're going to hang up and say, what? What did that guy say? My God, am I supposed to turn right or left? Just call my office or email us. We'll send you the printed material. You can go ahead, you can read it over, and then if you have questions, call us up or email us.
Oh, Steve, I love the service that you're providing to all of our KGO listeners. Stay healthy, and we will be sharing that email or that website and that phone number, MoskowitzLLP.com, 1-888-TAX-DEAL. Take Steve up on his offer, because it can be confusing. And, Steve, let's do this again real soon.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Thank you. All right, more next on KGO.
You're listening to Nikki Maduro on KGO 810 with a reminder to keep up your social distancing and frequent hand washing so we can all beat this virus together.